Hello, you're listening to Josh Talks. Today I'm here with Andy Mitchell. Andy Mitchell's had a very successful career at Man City, Rangers, Southport, Linfield Crusaders, and Larne. How are you today, Andy?
Yes, all good, all good. Sunday, so bad result yesterday, but we'll go again Tuesday. A good thing about football is it gives you another chance to bounce back, which is good. So hopefully we can put it right on Tuesday.
Andy, I suppose the first question that we should ask you is how did your football journey start?
Um, Early days. Remember, just grew up in New Mosley, Glengormley area. Just kicking the ball around with my mates, and my first early memory of I joined the club at Green Island Football Club, and about six. I think I was about six. I joined, and then played in the under eights, sort of munchkins, and then at under eights, started playing proper at under tens with Green Island boys in Lisburn League, which was good for me back then. Bit of competition every week. We're in a good league, good players around us, playing against good teams, and we done well. And then just sort of took off from there and just staying at Green Island under the best coaches at the time, I thought. And so Green Island is where it all started. And then round about sort of 13, that's when sort of interest started coming across the water, which was exciting.
So you talk about how you started having an interest coming across. Did you know that there were scouts coming to watch you at games?
My dad kept it from me pretty well, mum and dad, but you sort of knew. I sort of knew by the managers talking around me. My dad was sort of talking to scouts on the phone, and he would tell me before games maybe Liverpool were coming to watch you today, or he would just let me know under no pressure, obviously, but he would just let me know he was coming and tell me wee things what to do and try to impress them and all this. So to be honest, I just seen it was football. I was still young. People don't really go across the water now till they're 16. So I was like 12, 13 years old. I was still sort of enjoying football and just enjoying getting out in the park and playing and trying to score as many goals as I can or try and set up as many goals as I can. I didn't really think much about it. So my dad done a good job, as I said, of keeping it from me, but I knew they were there, but there was never no pressure. So it didn't really grow on me.
I was listening to the podcast you did with Lauren, and
Yeah.
you talked about how you went over to Everton, but you didn't really enjoy it. What was the
Yeah.
reason behind that?
I didn't think, maybe, I don't know. I didn't, not that I didn't enjoy it. It was just a case of, it was my first trial and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I was leaving my home, sort of my home comforts. And I thought probably I was going into the same environment that it was around Green Island. And it wasn't that. It was tougher. It was more professional. And I just wasn't used to it. Not that I didn't want it. When I seen what was going over there with all them kids and what they were getting every day, it probably made me want it a lot more. But it was probably a bit too much, too young for me. What I had at Everton. I said on the podcast, they put me up in a hotel. I stayed in a hotel, and I was going down to get my dinner, and it was like you imagine, it was like fancy food, and I was only 13, and I'm used to mincing spuds with my with my mum in the house, and I wasn't used to it. So, and then I played the game. I remember the team, they had a good team. They had the boy Jose Baxter and all, who was tipped for massive things at Everton, and they had a really good team. And we played against Arsenal that day, and I done all right, but it was a tough game for me, and they were physically a lot stronger on me. They were quicker on me, and I was used to being the main man at Green Island, where no one could sort of get near me, and I was scoring a lot of goals. So when I went over there, probably looking back at it, not that I didn't enjoy it, but it was tough, and I probably seen it in a different way. Um, but it definitely stood me in good stead going into other trials, because I knew then I went to Everton, which was a Premier League club, and they were top 6, 7 club there, and I played against Arsenal, so I couldn't have went on a more harder trial. And the Scousers are just like us. They're quite tough. They're quite like they've grown up in a tough environment, and they're pretty much all fight the same as us in Northern Ireland. So I couldn't have got it any more tougher when I was over, which would probably stood me in good stead going on other trials.
I suppose it's one of those weird situations, obviously, because you're so young. And then when you're playing at Island and you're playing every week, you know all the people around you, they're all your friends. And then
Yeah.
you're going to a completely new environment where none of the kids really know you or know the way you play. And also just being friendly with them as well. It's a hard thing to go
Yeah.
into a completely new environment.
Yeah, that's it. I think I've learned now when players come into the change room and stuff, you try and go out of your way to talk to them. I think when you're that young, at 13, when you see people come into your change room, you don't envy them, but you know they're trying to come to take your place. Probably when you're 13, you have a wee bit more jealousy or a wee bit more envy about you. And I think that's probably what no one really talked to me at the team, and it was quite tough that way. But listen, I was only 13. I had the scout at the time was Billy Barr, who was the Aberdeen scout, and it was me and him over at the time, just me and him, and he was the only person I could relate to. And inside the sort of football change rooms, he wasn't there, so I was only seeing him when he left me off at the ground. He would go into the office and talk to the coaches or whatever, and I was stuck with the players. And don't get me wrong, they weren't bad lads. They just didn't. I just felt a wee bit lonely, and I wasn't expecting to create friends within 2 days I was there. But again, that's probably a wee element that was the way I found it a bit more tougher than it was. And as you said, it was at Green Island. I was training with all my friends and being in that environment, just stepping out of that environment into a different comfort zone was probably the reason why I found it tough. And I remember the scout come to me after the game, and he said to me that they want to see me again. And I took that as a positive, that I'd done okay in the game, and they wanted me back. But there was a lot of interest then of other clubs, and I had to go and travel other clubs to see it, and I found it as very good experience rather than looking back on that. It was good experience rather than a bad memory.
So then how did Man City come about?
To be fair, Man City wasn't really on the cards. It was sort of a late developer. I went to Everton. I was at the United Soccer School back here with Tony Eddie and Tony Coulter, Eddie Coulter, and people like that. And they had like a school over here at Lisburn Racket Centre, and it was all the sort of best players in Northern Ireland used to go to this every Wednesday night, and there was a few different age groups at it, so it was a good standard. And I remember going to that every week, so I was getting good training there. And then I went to Everton, I went to West Brom on trial. I was at the United Soccer School, and I had loads of other clubs that sort of interested around me. And then at the very end, it was like I was going everywhere. And at the very sort of end of the season, the Green Island season, under 13s, Man City came in, the boy called Willie McKeown. He was the main scout at Man City, and he rang my dad, and I think my dad put it off at the start. He sort of said to my dad sort of said to him that he's been on a lot of trials, he's going to enjoy his summer. But it was sort of, he said, just come over, have a look and see how it is. And I went over. It was their end of the season as well. And I went over, but we went over with Gilsey, who was the main boy at Green Island at the time, who overseed all the youth teams. My mum and dad went over, and the scout at Man City, Willie McKeown, and they asked me to play a game, but I think I was playing a couple of years above myself. And I think my dad was a bit skeptic of it, and everybody was like sort of skeptic of it. So I remember playing that game, and it was just the usual where your mum and dad would be standing on the sidelines, and the scout was there, and Gilsey was there, and Stevie Graham, who took my team at Green Island, was there. So there was like a lot of people were watching, and I remember getting the ball like 5 minutes in the game, and I went on like a sort of wee mazy run and took a shot from like 30, 40 yards, and it cracked off the bar. And when you're younger, I was still only 13 at the time, remember? So when you're younger, you probably look over to your mum and dad for every now and then to see if you're doing well, and then my mum would usually give me the thumbs up, and my dad would just sort of smile, and I knew I was doing well in the game. But I remember hitting a shot, and I looked over at mum and dad, and I seen them all like walking away. I seen them all like all the scouts and my mum and dad and Gilsey and Stephen walking up towards the sort of facility that the change rooms in. So I started getting a bit nervous, like, what's going on here? What have I done wrong? And then played the game. After the game, I got showered, quickly changed, and straight up. And I seen my mum had been crying, like there was a bit of tears in her eyes. And then my dad, I didn't know what was happening, and I just knew I'd done well in the game. And then I got to the airport, and my dad pulled me, and he was like, they've offered you a contract, and we're moving to Manchester in 2 years' time. So no, we're moving to Manchester in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, so that's sort of where Man City came on. I was a late developer, but it moved very, very fast that summer, and I was a Man City player within a month.
I think for people listening at home, that's a massive achievement in itself, because most people who go across the water, it's not that they're 16, 17. And
Yeah,
then Man City's also put a massive investment on you as well, because they've moved you over at such a young age.
yeah, yeah. Well, that was the plan. The plan was, I got offered a contract at West Brom and I got offered a contract at Everton, but they weren't going to sign me until I was 16, because I think that's the legal thing. You can't go across until you're 16 unless you live within, I think it's 9 miles within a training ground or something. So at 13, Man City offered my mum and dad over, well, my whole family, my mum, dad, my sister, my brother. And my mum and dad and my sister moved over with us, but my brother he wanted to stay, so with his friends. So he lives with my granny, and then the three of us went over. The four of us. And yeah, so it was a massive change. I left school when it was second or third year, towards the end of second year, going into third year. So I went to school one day a week in Manchester, and it was just a whole life change for me. I left sort of all my friends behind, a lot of money across the water, and I think it was MSN or something back then, and you had mobile phones, and you could still talk to your friends, but it wasn't like usually like all your friends would be out on a Friday night around the park kicking the ball about, or just see them after school and stuff. And I didn't have any of that growing up. It was more, I was drilled as a footballer since I was 13. So I don't regret anything I've done. And people look at it now and says, would you wish you probably stayed until you were 16 to get that bit more experience? But when Man City are offering you a contract at 13 to go and train every day, and it's very hard to turn down, and to be a professional footballer sort of at 13, which is scary thinking about it now. I could never have turned that down. So I don't regret nothing, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. It was brilliant.
So when you moved over when you were 13, were you training every day with Man City, or was it specific nights, or what way was that?
No, I trained every day. So I went to school 2 days a week, 3 days a week, and you still went in, trained either after school, or you would train in the morning. And you go to school in the morning, you train that night. So I still had to train every day, whether it was with the scholarships, the under 16s and 18s on certain days, and then you would go in at night times and train with obviously the under 14s or whatever it was. But most of my training was with the under 16s and the under 18s at that time, it was like the under 16s were 3 years ahead of me, and then the under 18s obviously were 5 years ahead of me. So it was massive at that time, and they were a lot more bigger on me and stronger on me. But it was just like more technical stuff I was learning every day, and the coaches were top class, and I think everybody else knew the situation I was in, and helped me along the way, which was brilliant. And yeah, so it was the schooling was actually quite tough. People think moving schools easy. I used to see like kids in Glengormley High when I went there, and you would see like a new kid join the school, and like looking back on that, it's like a bit like going in their first change room, not many people talking to you. It was the exact same with school, only a lot more people. You'd walk about lunchtime on your own for a while, and nobody knew who you were. And then when you started speaking, that they found out that was Northern Irish, and people were skeptic, what's he doing over here? And then they would ask you questions, and it was just hard to make friends. But to be fair, after about the first 3 or 4 weeks, I made really good friends in school. And obviously when they found out I played football, and you had the divide between the United fans and the City fans, which was funny. But yeah, I made very good friends. People come to me in school and made me feel welcome after that 3 or 4 week period. But it wasn't my friends back home. It wasn't the people I grew up with all my life, which was tough. But again, it was just I just was wanted to be a footballer, and that's all I wanted to ever do. So that's what I had to do at that time.
For young people that are listening to this, who are maybe going through the same thing that you're going through, what
Yeah.
advice would you give them?
If they got the chance to go across that early, or just in general growing up.
Just in general, going across the water, like what sort of advice would you give?
Just I think a lot of people now, I think people get tarnished with this homesickness. They get tarnished with missing their friends, maybe growing up and having to leave home is a major factor. But it's not, you're only a flight journey away. And I done it when I was 13 and I survived more than enough. I had my family with me, of course, and it was much easier. But listen, there's people in digs when I moved to under 16s, there were people in digs, and the digs people can't look after you enough. The club will always go out of their way to help you. But Big Jeff Hughes, actually, we were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. Big Jeff Hughes at Larne, our captain at Larne, and he found when he went over, and at under 16 people go over, they find that they've got a lot of time in their hands, and they go over, and when you go into training, as soon as training ends, you go home, and you're that tired because you're not used to that training. You go home and sleep. So people find it hard that way, and so I would just the information I would give about going over is before you go over, like just have the mindset that you're going to stick it out and no matter what happens or what gets thrown at you, you're going to stick it out as much as you can, because and don't regret it. It's very easy at 16 to look back at things and go, I should have done this and should have done that. So when you do go over, ask questions. My big regret was I had some top class coaches at Man City. I worked with, like, our manager at one stage was Brian Kidd, who worked with Alex Ferguson's for 20 odd years. So I had him as our manager, and I don't think once did I ask him how to improve my game, just probably because who he was, and I was scared to ask him at that age. But just ask as many questions as you can. Ask how to get better. Like, stay behind a training. And it doesn't have to be like, you don't have to highlight your staying behind a training because a lot of that goes over where you get the people in the change room and the players in the change room calling you busy and what's he doing? He's busy as anything, staying behind, and you get wee nagging. But people now, I had an interview with Cal Naismith, and looking back at it now, you don't really care. Them people that saying they were busy, they're the ones that they're not in football anymore. So just do as much as you can when you get over there. And when you get over there, have a mindset that no matter what, I'm going to stay over here, because it's not easy. It's not easy. You have to be better than what they have over there. And when you get there, you have to continue to improve to make sure they bring the one in. So yeah, just give it your all when you're over there and do as much as you can and have no regrets.
Did you find that every year that sort of you got a wee bit older and you progress, say, to under 15s, under 16s, under 17s, that it started to get more serious after every year?
Yeah, I think when I was, the good thing about the thing that helped me along the way was the Northern Ireland setups. I think when I first went over to Man City, I was 13, but I was involved in the Tri-Nations, which was like Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland used to go to Hill. We actually done ours in Wales, and it was and then the Victory Shield came along. So I was always involved in Northern Ireland setups where I was around like a lot of professionalism. So like Northern Ireland setup was like under 16s Victory Shield, and you were playing against players that I was playing against in England, but maybe boys hasn't got their moves yet, or they're playing for moves. And then under 17s it started to get serious. But at under 17s in Northern Ireland squad, I was away with them, and the boy Texan Shinawatra came in at Man City, and I was actually away in international with the under 17s, and it came up on Sky Sports that Man City had a takeover for whatever it was. He was a multi-billionaire in Thailand, and that was when the money started coming in. And then I think his first signing was Robinho, and he started signing all the Brazilians like Robinho, Wilano, Joe. And then I remember going back that summer to Man City, and we were talking about signing players from like Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United, Liverpool. We were bringing all these players in they weren't sort of Manchester bred players anymore. It was like more foreign players were coming in, and you started seeing the club growing in terms of the academic structure was getting better players in. Don't get me wrong. The reason why I joined Man City was because that season I joined was, I think they produced something like 16 or 17 academy graduates into the first team that year in the Premier League. So I thought at the time that was the best move for me to obviously bring my career forward and hopefully play in the Premier League one day. I thought at 13, obviously you're never going to play in the Premier League, but at that time that club was the best for producing players in the first team. So that's why I joined Man City compared to the rest. But as I said, under 17s, that's when you've seen all them players coming in, not just the first team, but they started introducing them to the academy, which you knew then like, wow, we're the proper club now with big money, and they're going to start challenging for Europe, and that's when it started to get serious.
So this is probably a wee bit of an odd question, but at your time at Man City, when you talk about the takeover and different foreign players coming over, did you ever find in training that there was like a language barrier?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I've not been asked that before, but um, I think more so for the foreign players coming in. I think they had a tutor. They used to get tutoring at the club, and obviously you would still be stuck with your Manchester, your Mancunians, you called them at the time, who they were playing at the academy for years and years within each other. So I think when you went to England, it was very, I don't want to sound bad here, but it was very in it for yourself. It was very dog eat dog, and it was basically the best player wins. You're all fighting for one thing, to get in that first team, become a Premier League player. And you found that the foreign players would stick together, not because they weren't a team and we didn't like each other, but probably because what you're saying is the same sort of language is that they would learn. They would have their same traditions in terms of the food they ate. They would go and, like, again, everyone loved Nando's, but the only place we would all go together would be Nando's. I had a Scottish friend at the time, James Wood, who his dad was ended up being the Scotland goalkeeper, played against George Best and stuff. And so I had like a friend that way where I could communicate very well because the language barrier wasn't there, as you said. But we had players from like Sweden, we had players from France, we had players from Spain. So we had a lot of players in our team who were players from Greece, with a lot of players who couldn't speak English and found it hard speaking English. But when you play football, it's different. But it's just around the change room. It's around when you're in the lunch, eating lunch together. You can't have the same conversations you would have with your English spoken players or your. So yeah, it's a tough question, but I don't think it impacted on our team very much because we were a good side and we sort of let our football do the talking.
It's one of those that is a wee bit hard. Like I remember from my own life experiences, I remember I went over and I lived in Kenya for three
Yeah,
months. And because I have like a very broad Belfast accent, see, for the first couple of months, like it was hard just having, general conversation with people. Because like
yeah,
obviously from being Northern Ireland, you talk way a bit faster.
yeah. That's what it is. So when I was in, that's what I found hard when I was in school. Where it was probably fun. It's probably funny at the time, but um, like people just like come up to you and ask you to say something and all, and you're like, what do you want me to say? And they're like, and then they'll just laugh at you. But I was only 13. I said, hey, are you laughing at me? Like, it's because of my accent. And then you would get like people not that people are jealous, but people are like talking to you and like mimicking your accent and taking the piss out of you a bit. And you're like, oh dear, like, what am I doing here? And you feel like a loner and you're walking about on your own. But again, around the club, I had at the time Ram McGivern and Chris Ramsey, and a year after them we need Dugan. So I had a sort of Northern Irish contingent at Man City at the time, which helped me a lot. Ram McGivern and Chris Ramsey were brilliant with me. Ramsey was a year older than me, and I think McGivern was 2 years older than me, or I think they might have been on the same age. But yeah, they helped me a lot. So I got it. I had a lot of good people around me when I was at City, which helped me a lot. I don't think there was ever a time where I thought this isn't for me, and I want to go home. I don't like it here. It was never that. It took me a while to settle. Don't get me wrong, but when I've settled and there was people around me help me settle, it was perfect. I was in the perfect environment. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So then we'll move on to, you played in the International Championship in 2010. What was that like?
Was that the one in Dubai?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was my first real trip away where I'd been away with our Ireland squads and I'd been away with like Green Island. We went to Holland, went to a wee tournament in Holland but that was really my first trip away where I've been away as a club, like at a club. And that was when we went to Dubai when the Sheikhs took over Man City. So the Sheikhs had just took over Man City and taxing. I think he actually got put to jail for money laundering or something mad, or tax fraud, or it was something mad like that. But he wasn't doing it anymore. And then Sheikh Mansour came and bought Man City, and he was just on another platform in terms of money. So if we thought Rubinho signing for 40 million was bad, this boy came into a whole new level, and our academy totally changed. And it was just scary. So, but I remember we got invited out to the tournament to play in Dubai, Al Ain, and Abu Dhabi it was. And I remember getting off the plane, and there was like people waiting on us, like give us wee bags. So there was like girls, like the wee Emirates girls, they were waiting on us, and we were only under 17s, 18s. They were waiting on us when we got off the plane, like one girl each, and they were giving us like these wee blue bags. We were like, what? We were like, what is in these bags? So we all got on the bus, checked in the bags, and there was like silly things, like, but it was like wee pens, like so like a wee Parker pen, which would cost a few quid, and then there was like a wee goodie thing, and then there was like these crystals, like these Swarovski crystals. So like just like wee mementos. But that's the first trip where I've been away. We've been treated like absolute kings. Like we were treated so well that whole trip with the hotel there ourselves in Abu Dhabi. And we were just like a bunch of lads from the Arman City team just from about Dubai. It was quite surreal. But the tournament itself would played against teams like Inter Milan, scary teams like out there. We actually won it. We played against the team in the final who was Al Ain. That was the home ground. They were in Dubai, and at half time they had a game on. The next straight after our game, they had a game on. So their fans started coming into the stadium like during half time to watch their game. So it started like the crowd to start was probably about 2,000. And towards the end, it started to build around 20, 30, 40,000 at this ground. So we had never really experienced that, but they were all dressed as sheiks as well. So they all had like the big white robes on. It was just surreal playing in it. And we won it on penalties, and which was incredible. We beat that team Alain in penalties, and what a tournament that was. It was really, really good. And a year after that, I wasn't at the club, but I found out then that the club had an extra year in my contract, and the club sort of said to my mum and dad that he can move up the reserves, but he's probably not going to get a chance. And I remember a few clubs coming in for me at that time, and it was one of the clubs was Rangers, and that was sort of my last memory of Man City was winning that Al Ain tournament in Dubai, which was a great experience.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned there about Rangers coming in for you.
Mm-hmm.
So did they approach you directly, or your parents directly, or did they sort of just go for the club?
The first contact we had was Phil Cowan back home, who was a Rangers scout. I think Jim Sinclair was the head of the academy system at Rangers, or head of football at Rangers, and Phil Cowan rang my dad and was just saying that we're interested in Andy and such, and we would like to get him down. And my dad said to me about it, and to be fair, as soon as my dad said Rangers, there was no other option for me. It was like I want to go to Rangers, and within 2 weeks when I came home from Dubai, I'd signed for Rangers. So the first approach was Phil Cowan, ringing my dad, asking would I be interested, and then there was a yes, and then the next thing was getting us all down as a family to Glasgow to talk terms at Rangers and talk how the Rangers was going to happen at Rangers. So yeah, it all happened pretty quickly, but it was good.
So when you actually signed for Rangers, what team did you sign for?
So this is a good question, because when I signed for Rangers, it was I came from academy football at under 18s, and I thought I was going till probably, because they had an under 20s team at Rangers, and they work theirs differently. Where I think it's you sign professional when you're 16 at Rangers, and then I don't think it's as much money as what you sign a pro if you're at England. But you're a professional player as of, you don't have any scholarships, is what I'm saying, at Rangers. So you sign professional forms Rangers when you're 16, and then they have their under 17s, they have their under 19s, and they have their under 20s team. So I thought I was signing for like just I didn't know who I was signing for. I was signing for Rangers, but what happened when I signed for Rangers was it started coming up on like Sky Sports News. It was on the main headbar in Sky Sports News that Andrew Mitchell from Man City is saying for Rangers. And so it was coming across, it was like I was saying for Rangers first team, but I was being told I was going into under 20s. So I knew myself where I was signing for, but I remember getting the gates at Murray Park, and there was like photographers there. So it was like it was a massive thing at the time for Rangers to probably sign me from Man City. And again, I would just come out of academy football, so I didn't really know first team football yet. So I knew I was signing for the under-20s. But yeah, as I said, it all happened very quickly at Rangers, and I moved down to Glasgow within a month after leaving Dubai.
It's sort of crazy when you think about it. Like you mentioned there, when you were playing in the championship and you had 40,000 people watching you play an academy game. And
Yeah,
then when you get the Rangers, you're now having photographers waiting outside the ground to see you.
yeah, it was mad. It was surreal. It was a moment that you're thinking, I'm on Sky Sports, and your mates are texting, and your mates are sending you messages, and it was mad that way. But yeah, it was, again, that was a one-off, that their Abu Dhabi tournament where there was 40,000 people. But within a month, yeah, I was a Rangers player, which was scary, because I found it strange because at City I was doing really well. I just broke into the reserve team, and the reserve team at the time was, it was like boys like Kieran Trippier and Andrew Tutt, Valerie Bojnov was playing, Adam Clayton. These are all boys that are like playing regularly now in the championship. Kieran Trippier is playing for Atletico Madrid. So they were good players, and I was doing well, and it was only 17, 18, so I was doing well in the reserve team. So it was a bit strange how I thought I was going to do well at Man City and kick on, but it just, listen, the money was just on a different level. And the academy, they weren't bringing players to the academy anymore. It was just bringing anybody in who was doing well at other clubs, and they were buying them for silly money. So it was so it all happened pretty quickly, and I thought, you couldn't, again, people say to me, are there any other options to go to, like maybe League One in England, Championship in England, and work their way up through there? But again, I was in a dilemma where, like, Glasgow Rangers were offering me. It's hard to turn them clubs down when they come after you. They're such big clubs, and it's all right in hindsight saying that you could have signed for, no disrespect, for like a League One, say Oldham or something at the time, who were close to Manchester. I could have signed for Oldham, but like, you compare Oldham to Rangers, and you go down to Rangers and you see the stadium and you see the training ground. You're like, you can't turn it down. So it's hard. So that's why I ended up signing for Rangers.
I know we're sort of jumping back and forth here, but see, at your time at Man City, when you were at the reserves, was the reserves also training with the first team as well, or was that completely separate?
They were completely separate, which I regret. The first team in the reserves trained at a place called Carrington, and there are youth teams under 18s down trained at Platt Lane, which was a facility, a great facility inside Manchester, and then the other ones were out in Carrington, which was back to back the United training ground. So the whole point is you try and get from under 18s, and you sign your pro contract and get across till Carrington. So I remember the sort of last year I was sort of dipping from Platt Lane to Carrington every so often. The when you got a chance to the reserve team, the under 18s manager would come down to you and say, you're going up to train with the reserves today, and you would have to get in the car and they would drive you up to Carrington. So yeah, that was sort of how my last year at Man City was spent, was the under 18s, but training every so often at Carrington with the reserves, which gave me a taste for sort of being around first team players and being around the reserve players who were close to the first team. So yeah, that was good.
I think you made a really good point about just, Man City weren't really bringing people through the academy as such. Like over the last couple of years, it's in the papers and all that. Like I think it was in one season, I spent over 200 million just on left backs and right backs.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary when you think about it now, the money in football and the bigger clubs, and I think the chance of breaking through the academy, it's sitting something like 1%. Like, it's scary when you think of many players in academies in England that don't make it, and they fall away from football. So and again, at the time, Man City, when I first joined, it was the main place to be in terms of the academy. Everybody wanted to join Man City because they were producing players, and within 2-3 years, the club just completely changed. And I think the people at Man City, in terms of the academy structure, they were probably frustrated that they still had the hopes and aspirations that they still wanted to produce players. But, and don't get me wrong, they still produced players, but it wasn't as much as what they were doing. And it was maybe one or two every season, not even, rather than 16, 17, 18 every season. So that was the big difference, and that was the big pull about going to Man City at the time. But again, a wee bit of bad luck. It changed, and whoever was good in the European level, they were bringing in. So it was tough.
Yeah. So then you moved the Rangers. How did you find the standard?
Um, this is where I moved to Rangers thinking that it was going to be easy. I'm not going to lie. I thought I was coming from Man City, it was a Premier League club, and I probably underestimated the standard at Rangers and the players at Rangers. And so when I first went there, I thought that I was going to be probably better than them. And so the first year, I remember the first year at Rangers, I struggled. Couldn't get in the under 20s team. Couldn't get a kick. I sat in the bench. I signed a 2-year contract and sat in the bench probably the full year. I was dipping in and out of games, and I was still training with the Northern Ireland setup and still getting into that, like under 17s, under 19s, and under 21s. So I was still like progressing on that stage, but I wasn't progressing at my club. And probably the way things were going, I wasn't better than the players that I was there at Rangers in my position. So I had to work hard, and it was only until probably a year later where I was on my last year of my contract, and I thought, listen, if I get another year here, I could be back home very quickly. So I remember having a talk with my dad and my mum, and I was like, I need to work harder in training. I need to go in and train more. I need to do things more, and I need to prove to myself that I should be here. And I did. That the second year in my contract, I came home in the summer, really knuckled down well, and I started going in on my days off every Wednesday. We had a day off on a Wednesday or a Thursday. I started going in and started training and started doing bits on my own. And it wasn't, I don't know if you've heard this story, but it was about 6 weeks in then Wednesdays, about 6 or 8 weeks in. I was training on my own in the dome. And obviously all my age group were at home. They didn't go in. That was their day off. And I remember the first team coach, Ian Durant, came round to me, and he says to me, are you training? Are you training someone or something? He said, and I was like, yeah, just on my own. He was like, the first team need a player. Do you want to come in and train? So I was like buzzing. I was nervous as anything, because it was like at the time it was the Rangers first team. It was like Steve Davis, McGregor, Papa, it's all them boys, Davy Weir, McCulloch. So I remember thinking, yeah, 100% I want to train. So they've done like 11-11 bounce game, and I played like right wing in that game, and I've done okay. And don't get me wrong, that didn't give me my chance to Rangers first team, but I think what it did do is it gave the first team coaches I think it showed to them that I had the right attitude, and I done okay in the game, and I just put myself a bit more a name at Rangers. I don't think they knew about me much until that day where they seen me training on my own. So yeah, that sort of gave me my chance to. And if I didn't do that, I would never have got the chance to probably kick on at the Rangers career I had.
Yeah, you can see that it was a lot of your hard work put you in that position, going in on your days off and actually working hard.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought the second year is like, if I continue to do what I'm doing, it's just the same. It's not enough. I'll be back home or I'll be out of Rangers, and I didn't want to leave Rangers. It was a great club, so that's when I decided to myself, I need to knuckle down. I need to start training more, and doing more to training ground. So it took me 8 weeks going in every Wednesday, and then including the days I was ready in. It took me 8 weeks to probably get a slight chance to ever train with the first team. So that's when it all kicked off for me. And then I remember after that, it was more the first team coaches would come around like every sort of day after that, or like week by week, and they would pick players to come around like every week and train with the first team. And I was probably more or less training with the first team like every other week on that basis. I wasn't still getting into the under 20s team, but I was training with Rangers first team, which was crazy. But yeah, it gave me my chance, and I started to do well. I started to get more confident within the training with the first team, and then it was only until the next year after that where I was made reserve team captain. I was captain the reserve team, and then training with the first team and on the fringes of it. So it actually worked out very well for me by just going in on Wednesdays.
I think football's a very funny game because, it changes so quickly.
Yeah,
You know,
100%. I think that's what people think. And again, you talked to me about advice going over, and I think if you prepare yourself and keep yourself in the right way and just prepare yourself for that chance when you get it, and it turns out that your wee bit of luck has to be sacrificed by your preparation as well. So if you put in the work and you're ready for that chance, then you'll take it. If you don't put in the work and you get that chance and you don't take it, then it's not bad luck. It's you haven't been prepared for that chance. I was prepared. I thought I was prepared for that chance, and I took it. Don't get me wrong, it didn't give me my debut for Rangers. It didn't take another year to get that, but it gave me that chance to put my name in their head that anytime there was training, then I was going to be the first name down for that training. So that's what it did give me.
I think for me, looking at that situation and from what you're saying, if I was one of those coaches, I would say that there's a fella coming in and he's working harder than everybody else that's there because he's coming in his days off. And it shows that you're also hungry and that you want that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's what the main thing is, as you said, about being hungry and just trying to stand out from the rest. Because when you go to England, again, I said it, you have to be better. You have to be the same and better than what they already have. So if you're going into an environment where there's players around you who are all the same, and the first team manager is looking at it, you have to be the one to be seen to be doing extra, or again, down to attitude, where you have to be the one to be seen to be the one a bit more hungry to go and take that chance. And I think coaches now and managers pick up on that very easily, and they will give you it if you're doing well.
Yeah. I think another thing is, see when you were going in on your days off, were you talking to coaches and finding out what they wanted you to work on? Or were you just going on your own bat?
No, to be honest, no. My whole football career until probably Linfield, I never really asked. It's one of my biggest regrets in terms of the coaches I work with, and I didn't really ask, like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you want me to get better on? And I don't know why. There's no reason. There's no not. I don't think it's down because I was shy, or I just it was probably like an ego thing, like I don't know. I don't know what it was. I just didn't. Maybe I was scared to talk to certain coaches, or I don't know what the answer is. I always ask myself, like, why didn't he ask the question? Why didn't he ask Brian Kidd at Man City? Why, like, pull him aside and say, Brian, what have I got to do to get better? What do you think I've got to work on? I don't know why, and I'm sure there's a lot of kids out there who don't ask. Like, I coach a bit myself now, and I don't get many kids coming up to me and asking. Again, simple thing like Lauren over jumping way forward, but like Gareth McCauley came into our training the other week, and I still didn't ask. So it's just like wee things that you don't do. I don't know why, but I've started to do a lot more now with my coaches. Again, I try to get kids, I'm speaking to kids, to ask more and keep asking, because like I work with, as I said, Brian Kidd. I work with at Rangers. I work with Ian Durant. I work with Kenny McDowell, who was at Celtic and Rangers, like top class coaches, McCoist and Walter Smith. But even in the game, like Lee McCulloch, Davy Weir, Steve Davis, like boys that I probably should have asked, like, what can I work on, or what do you think I should get better at, or what is it I can do to push players in the first team. And I just didn't ask. I don't know why, but it's one of my biggest regrets. So again, as a big thing now in football, I think you should ask coaches around you, ask players around you, like, how to get better, and feed off it. So yeah, so I don't know why I didn't do it, but I should have.
Yeah. So then, if we're moving on, then, and you're coming up to your debut, but before your debut, you were an unused sub against Hearts.
Yeah, I remember actually. I remember being on the squad for the first time. Don't get me wrong, I was in and around training. By this time, I was in and around training with the first team probably more or less every day. I was captain of the reserve team, so I was doing well in the reserve team. I was playing a lot of positions in the first team, in the reserve team, which I think, which was a good thing for the first team manager at the time, McCoist, because he probably seen me as a player that could play anywhere. So he was always like thinking on me that way. I remember going into the first team and I was doing well, and I never really thought that I was going to make a match day squad. To be honest, I was actually just buzzing being around the training ground with like my idol at the time, Steve Davis. Again, I had Andy Little, I had big Chris Higgerty, who was at the club at the time. So they were all around me, which Kyle Lafferty had a good like Northern Irish contingent again. And I was just enjoying, to be honest, I was just enjoying going into training every day, training with them boys, simple things like them boys would ask you like how you are, and you would be buzzing off it because they're talking to you. You would sit down them next to them on their lunch, talk away, bit of banter. Like these are like boys that are doing it for Northern Ireland, and you're watching them on TV. So although I was 18, I was sort of a man then, I was still buzzing that I was training with my idols, and David Healy, Steve Davis, Kyle Lafferty is the people I mentioned. So, and then further afield, like the Rangers first team in terms of Alan McGregor, Davy Weir, Papich, all them boys. So I was just happy to go in every day and train with them boys. And then it wasn't until, as you said, the Hearts game where they had a rule in Scotland where they had to put 5 under-21 players in the squad. But we had like the likes of Jamie Ness, Andy Little was young then, Kyle Hutton, Ross Perry. These were all boys that were all doing well. Like they had passed the reserve team stage and they were on the cusp of the first team, but they were still under 21. So they were in the category of the under 21 players. But if one of them ever got injured or out of form, or I started to do well for the reserve team more, then I sort of found myself having a chance after chance about maybe being in the squad. I remember Kenny McDowell, he used to walk in every Friday. He used to walk past the office and he used to obviously tell the girl in the office, Jackie, he called her, she used to tell him the squad. She would obviously write it out and then print it out, and then Kenny McDowell would go in the change room, pin it up in the first team change room. So like after training, the players would come in and check the match day squad. It would just be up, and then obviously you knew you were in it or not. And I remember one day I was just used to going in and not even walking in the first team dressing room. I would just walk right back and go up to the academy dressing room again, get my boots off. And I remember Andy Little walking down behind me and like just tapped me in the back and saying, "Well done, Mitch Smith." And I was like, what's happened? He was like, "You've made the squad for the Mara." And I went, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You've made the first team squad for the Mara, Hearts away." And I was like, "What? No way." And then he was like, "Yeah, go up and check it there." But I was still frightened to go into the first team dressing room. It was just you weren't allowed in the first team dressing room unless you were a first team player. So I remember walking up to the first team dressing room and I just stood outside the door until one of the first team boys said to me, "Mitch, you can go on in and look if you want." So I remember, I think it was Andy Little standing outside. He's like, "Come on in, check." So he was in like looking at the sheet. I just went in, just seen my name like highlighted. Andrew Mitchell, like way down. It was like probably last on the list, but Andrew Mitchell, and my squad number was 40. I remember walking in, seeing it, and don't get me wrong, it was pure buzzing. And don't get me, I knew I wasn't going to be on the bench because it was like 22-man squad, but just to be on that list was scary. And then I remember actually traveling with the team, went in the team bus, stayed overnight in the hotel. Basically treated like a totally different member and what it was the academy of the first team. And then the next day, the gaffer named the team and named the bench, and I was on the bench. And I was like wow, like being on the bench at Hearts. And if you've ever been to Hearts, it was a real tight stadium. So going into Hearts and like even walking in, seeing your top up with Mitchell 40 in the back, and just scary. Like I didn't really take it at the time. It was just like wow. I remember looking at my Twitter after the game. It went from like 30 followers to like 3,000 followers. So it was just things just started snowballing from there. And then I had to skip to my step when I was walking to the train on Monday, and just my confidence grew, and yeah, it just all sort of snowballed from there. But what an experience.
When you're in the dressing room at Hearts, did any of the first teamers say anything to you to sort of put you at ease?
No, because I wasn't starting anything, and they probably knew I wasn't starting, and they probably knew that it was just a taste for me. I got probably a manager at the time that he was probably never going to bring me on. It was just probably a taster for me to maybe what reaction am I going to have? Am I going to go down the big time route and think I've made it, or am I going to go in the train on Monday and have that bite about me a bit more that I want that more and more? And I probably took it the second way, where like I remember thinking, wow, I want this every week now. I want to travel with us every week. I want to be involved every week, and I sort of had the attitude that I'm going to do whatever it takes to try and get that a lot more. And And I don't know when, hopefully you'll be able to tell me, but I actually don't know when I made my debut after that. It was just a blur then. I was training with us every day, working really hard to try and make the squads every week. And I think I did. I think I made the match day squad every week. Beyond that, the good thing is that not for the club, but for myself, administration hit pretty much after that, I think. And it made me just be around the club and be around the first team a lot more.
Mm-hmm. So what was it like when administration sort of hit? Was there like a very negative atmosphere around the dressing room? And
I think it was just a bit of confusion about everything, because I remember I was training with the first team regularly then. I wasn't a first team player, but I was training with them probably every day. So like, during all them meetings with Craig White was coming into our training ground talking to all the players, and the players were asking him questions. Like, I was in all them meetings. So basically he was coming in saying things and then going out of the training ground, and it was just totally different, like what was happening. So the players were obviously annoyed, but we had to still concentrate on playing games, training, doing well for the club. So we were just concentrating on football, to be honest. And for me, I was just concentrating on, it was all going over my head, to be honest. I was just concentrating on getting into the match day squads and trying to get my debut, or trying to get minutes, or just continue to do well and impress the manager, because that's all you ever do when you're a young kid growing up. You just, if the first team player says to you go and clean the toilets, you'll go and clean the toilets. Or if the manager says go and jump over that fence backwards, you'll jump over the fence backwards. And that's the way it was for me. I was just sort of growing and learning off all these players every day, and that was sort of all going on in the background. And don't get me wrong, I knew it was going on, but my main thing was, when am I going to get my chance? Or I was just so driven to continue to stay in that first team squad.
so it could be wrong. This is pulled off the internet, but it says March 17th, 2012 was your debut against Dundee.
Yeah, it was.
So
So when
what
was the
was it?
Hearts game? When was the Hearts game? Do you know?
Apparently the Hearts game was in March as well.
So it must have been a couple of weeks after. Again, see what you're saying there about administration. That felt like that went on. There were just long days at the club. There was lies being told to the players. The players were all talking amongst themselves what was going to happen. People were losing their jobs around the club. People were talking about losing their jobs. So again, the club was in a dark place, and it was a difficult time for the club. And the fans were still turning out their numbers. The fans were incredible. Like, we used to have fans waiting outside Murray Park to get signatures signed, and so again, you still felt like there was nothing to take away. You still felt like a Rangers player. Like, no matter where you went, people started knowing you a lot more because you were involved with the squad. And so again, when I was on the bench against Hearts, from then I started to be a bit more in the bubble, where people on the street started recognizing you. Um, People back home were talking. It snowballed a lot from there. And then obviously when I went into training that Monday morning, I had the attitude that I wanted to make my debut, and probably the manager picked up on that, and I was doing well in training. And again, March the 17th, that would have been March the 16th then, because it would have been on the Friday. Then I remember the gaffer, he never used to do it, but he named the team on the Friday. And again, it's pretty much like the match day squad thing, where I never really thought that was going to be in the team. It was a case of, I knew it was going to be in the squad, but I was fighting to get in the squad, but probably the bench, but I never knew it was never ever going to start. Although I was doing well in training, I probably deserved it because I was doing well, but I didn't think in a million years I was going to start for Rangers. And then what was it? So the Friday came, and we done the training session. Used to do like a little rondo at the start, two players in big circle, keep the ball off him, and he used to do a bit of fast feet, and then he used to do a bit of set plays, and then you would go in, and and look at the squad. But this time he told everybody to stay out. He's going to name the team. So we were all there, probably about 30-man squad in total, and he started going through the team, and then I was like, we played a 4-5-1 that day, so I played right wing, and so he named the right back, centre back, the other centre back, the left back. He named the left hand sided player. He named the three in the middle, and then he named the right winger. So I was like one before the last, and then all I heard was, so he went through the whole team, and all I heard was and Mitch is going to start in the right, and then it's sort of like, it was sort of like a moment where, did he just say my name? And then the sort of 6 or 7 academy lads that I grew up with, and the first team players who sort of were around me, like Andy Little at the time, sort of just looked at me as if like, you're starting, like that's your name, you're starting. And then he told the rest to go in, and the starting 11 had to stay behind him. We'd done about a like team shape, but that whole time, that team shape, all I cared about was getting into my change room quickly and ringing my dad and all my friends to tell them I was starting. And just a pure buzz come over me. And he didn't speak to me. I remember McCoy, he didn't speak to me before. He didn't speak to me after. He didn't even speak to me before the game. It was more the players spoke to me. So yeah, it was just a bit of a mind-blowing moment. It was surreal. It was a moment I'll never forget. It was brilliant.
So what were the players saying to you?
The first player was probably Steve Davis. I remember on that day of the Friday, a lot of players just come up to me saying, "Well done, just go out and enjoy it, do well." Such and such. The academy coaches were coming up to me, just, "I believe you're starting tomorrow, Andy. Go out and enjoy it. Just do what you've been doing. No pressure." So they're all giving me good advice. And then it wasn't on the match day itself. We travelled away with the team. Again, I had a hotel room on my own, so I was probably up there by 3 o'clock in the morning, to be honest, telling everybody I was starting. And then it wasn't until the next day, that morning at breakfast, I remember Steve Davis coming over and talking to me. He just basically said to me, don't do anything differently in what you've been doing in training. Just go out and enjoy it, relax, and you'll be all right. And to be fair, I remember my top, we walked in the Dundee United change room, my top was sitting right beside Davis, and that was what really struck. It was like, wow, I'm playing for Rangers here. It was incredible, like, what a feeling. And walking out, although it wasn't at Ibrox, walking out Dundee away and the Rangers fans singing. The game was on Sky Sports. I played right wing, which I'd never played right wing before in my life. I played right wing. I'd done okay, but I remember just before the game, it really kicked in that we were playing Celtic in 2 weeks' time. So we had Dundee. The week after that, we had an international break, and then the week after the international break was Celtic. So I remember thinking just before the game, I was thinking, like, if I have a decent game here, or if I do well, I could be, or if we win, I could be starting against Celtic at Celtic Park. I was like thinking, wow, like, hopefully I do just enough to stay in the squad, never mind start. So I remember playing the game and I done all right, probably about a 7 out of 10 performance. Didn't do anything wrong in the game. Done all right, and then again we had a 2-week break, so continued to train, done well. A lot of people were talking about me. Just, I made my debut and done all right, and we actually got beat that game, but I done all right. And administration was still going on in the background, so there was a lot of things took off the football side of things. So came to the Celtic game, and again I was in the squad for that, on the bench. So again, another great experience.
So I have to ask you about this then. So you're on the bench for the Old Firm game. What was the
Yeah,
entire build up of that like, the entire week? Because obviously that's probably the biggest game of the season.
just a totally different, like, I don't think it lasts a week. I think it's like again, we all know when the fixture is and the Celtic fixture is, so all the boys know when it is. The week building up to it is incredible. Like, you get messages on your phone, you get people standing beside the ground singing. There's the whole week, the papers, no matter what paper you left, it's going to be in the paper. You get strapped in the street, give it your all against Celtic this week. There's just, the whole week is just mind blowing in terms of playing against Celtic. And then being on the bench was scary as well. I remember the manager told me to go out and warm up, and like, you're scared to go out and warm up. The place is absolutely erupting. Like, we won that day 3-2. Andy Little scored the winner. We're winning 2-1. And they come on and make it 3-1, and then they scored 3-2. So Andy ended up scoring the winner. But yeah, place was bouncing, as you can imagine. What a surreal experience. And then obviously having the top up in the first time at Ibrox as well, which was another experience, walking into the famous dressing room with, I think it's quite old-fashioned dressing room still, like the wooden benches, and I think it's class. And then you walk in, you see your top up against Celtic, and just on a different level, you just feel like you're a professional footballer. Everything everything you've worked up until that moment sort of clicks into place and just makes you want it even more and want to learn even more off them guys. So, but yeah, what a day.
So then, just for all the fans that are listening there, so you've just beat Celtic 3-2. What was the
Yeah.
changing room like after?
Again, I'm quite young still, but the boys are buzzing. They're not jumping around because their experience has. They're just more buzzing to beat Celtic, and you see different people coming in out of the change room. The managers coming in the night. The managers just give you a talk after the game. Well done, Brian lads. You've done it for the fan, done it for the club, and that's what it's all about. And you're a Rangers player, and you got to do these things. And again, the club's very traditional that way in terms of behaving the right way. So again, lads and yours are going out tonight. Don't be. In fact, I think he told us not to go out because of no firm night and just things like that. It really hits home that you're a Rangers player. You have to conduct yourself in the right way, even though you just got the biggest result of the season. And again, administration was still going on, so the fans were on a high. And like you walk out after the game and you walk out of the training ground. There's 50 odd fans waiting at the gate. You walk out in Ibrox and there's 1,000, 2,000 fans waiting on your signature. So again, it's just a whole different bubble about being a Ranger. It's just the fans are just so committed to the club and committed to the players, and will do everything for you. And it was a great time.
I think just on the administration side of things, you've got players on there who are on, say, big money, whatever it
Yeah,
is. And then when you start messing with those sort of paychecks, it puts them under financial pressure just as well. Even yourself, because they've still got mortgages to pay. There's still cars or whatever else.
yeah.
It's still a lot of pressure.
I think that was one of the main things at Rangers at the time, where I think they had to take pay cuts within a certain wage bracket. So I don't know. They obviously worked it out within the first team squad that I wasn't on. I wasn't on a lot of money. I was on good money, but it wasn't on a lot of money where I fell into the bracket of having to take a pay cut. I was still in my second year of my contract, thinking that remember at the start of that year, I wasn't going to be making the. No, I mean I wasn't making the 20s. Never mind the first team. So I was still on like a probably academy wage, like a another 20s wage. Don't get me wrong, I was still living comfortably. It was still living in a nice house in Glasgow, I was renting, but I wasn't running about in a flashy car. I didn't have flashy clothes. I would never have that about me anyway. But it was just a case of I was still trying to work my way up the football ladder and getting the first team games under the belt to get that better contract. So I wasn't on the money that the likes of the bigger players were on. So they, again, what you said, that yeah, but you're right, they all had mortgages to pay, that they were on money. But again, they're probably on their last year of their contract and they were told to be in pay cuts and they didn't know whether they were going to be there next year. So there was a lot of frustration. And then people around the club, like the dinner ladies, they were talking about them losing their jobs. So the players were taking pay cuts for them types of people. They weren't doing it for themselves. They were doing it for the people around the club who've been at the club for many years and they're the core of the club in terms of dinner ladies and people around the ground. So you never want to see anyone lose their jobs, and that was probably the main thing in people's minds and the players' minds, were keep everybody at the club and fight for the club and and the fans are still turning up their numbers, which was bringing revenue in the club. It was just what was going on in the background was just absolutely crazy, and people were getting frustrated with it. You think about it now, like the manager at the time, his head must have been absolutely gone. He didn't know where he was coming or going or what was happening, or it was just mental. It was actually mental when you think about it. But again, it was over the top of my head in terms of I hated to see the club go in the administration and where they went to, but at the same time, it gave a lot of players like myself the chance to play for Rangers and go in and try and become a footballer. And so it's great to see the journey the club have been on. And like I went through it at SPL, went the third division, second division, then I left the club. But I went. It's good to look back on and think that I had a part to play in that club and what it was at the time. So it's good to see them where they are now. More likely, hopefully, about to lift 55, which is nice.
I think just what you were saying there about, that a lot of players were taking pay cuts, to help people around the club who had jobs and their job was at risk. That's a different sort of pressure. There's the
Yeah,
pressure of winning games, but then there's also a pressure that, there's other people who maybe aren't on as much money, and when they lose their job, that's it. It's extremely hard to come back from, especially when you're at a club and all these people. These people are your friends as well.
yeah, 100%. I think like the dinner ladies like work on both the academy and the first team sides. So when I first joined the club, then and again you have that were the dinner ladies, and you got the lunch to look after you. They ask you things players don't ask you, like be things like how you doing at home, or is there anything I can do for you around the club, or do you need any food home? They'll come to you and ask you, what do you want me to, I don't know, what do you like in the morning for breakfast, things like that. So it just make you feel at home. So and then when they see you through all your lows and your highs, like they'll see you come in after a match on a Saturday on a Monday morning where you haven't had a good game, and they're the ones that pick you up. They're the ones that get around you. They're the ones that don't talk football, just ask you like normal things and treat you like a normal person. They don't care about football. They just care about making you happy and want to see you smile. Um, so when they see me, they've probably seen me in my first year where I've been depressed, where I've been out of the team, can't get in the team, walking about on my own, probably not enjoying it. And then they start to see me break into the first team. They start to see me in the squads. Then they see me make my debut, and they just see a whole change in me within like 2 years. So obviously, when you go through all that with them, like you can imagine what the first team boys that what I mean, like they've been through the exact same thing. So they look back at that and probably think, like, these are the core people. That's the way I think of them. So, and they're like that at every club. Like you don't want to see them people lose their job. Like, and that's what they were getting threatened with. If the club couldn't survive, then there was going to be job losses. There was going to be things taken from the club that you didn't want to be taken. So yeah, it's a time where you're in doubt. It's a time where you're always looking over your back to see if your wage is coming in. Never mind, like you're going to put food on the table for their kids. And yeah, it was an extremely tough time for the club. But as I said, it's great to see them come out the other side, and it was a long journey, but it's happened, and what's happened, and again, it's good to see it happening now.
I think it's amazing that you can look back at your career and say that you were part of that history.
Yeah, no, I was extremely proud, and I remember signing for the club. I remember making my debut for the club. I remember so much about the club. Even things like after administration, we won the reserve team trophy at the time, and I captained that squad. And I remember lifting that trophy at Ibrox for the first time. Like my memories of the club are like unbelievable. The friends I've got, um, like likes of Steve Davis, McCulloch, um, Andy Little, even the whole first team squad. They were like you can contact them now and say hello to them, and so to be a part of that was incredible. And probably me, I don't have any regrets there. I done what I could. I remember my one regret in the first year was not going in on my days off, and I reacted on my second year of that, and I ended up getting to where I was at Rangers. So it was a great time at Rangers, and I've very fond memories, and I love my time there.
So then coming to the end of your career at Rangers, how did that come about?
Um, Tough. It was really tough for me. I thought I probably got treated. I didn't like the way I got treated. To be honest with you, it didn't work out well in the end for me. I finished the season. I actually finished the third division off really well. I remember in the last 6 or 7 games, I think I got like 4 out of 5 man of matches, and I was out of contract. During my second year, where I told you where I was out of contract that year, I finished off that year where I made my debut. I managed to make maybe 3 SPL appearances, 2 or 3 maybe, but I was on the bench the rest of them, probably the last 10 games. And then towards the end of the year, McCoy's pulled me in and was like, we're going to, no, that summer, I still didn't know where I stood. And I had to come back to preseason. I remember ringing McCoy saying, Mitch, I want you to come back to preseason, but there's going to be a contract here for you, but just not yet. So I was like thinking, hang on a minute, come off the back of like playing the SPL, doing well. Now I don't know where I stand. Like I wasn't getting paid, so I was like thinking, what, I can't come back to pre-season. I had other clubs after me, and around my agent was like, "What do I do?" And he said, "What do you want to do, Andy?" And I was like, "I want to go back to Rangers, but I want to have a contract." And he's like, "Just go back for the first couple of weeks, and you'll know where you stand." So I went back, and that year I went back was obviously the year the administration hit, and there was literally, I think, 13 players turned up that season, and I think I seen it somewhere. It came out all the names of them players, but off the top of my head, it was like me, David Healy, Lee McCulloch, Lee Wallace, Neil Alexander, and then there was like Ross Perry, Kyle Hutton, Andy Little, and then it was like Lewis McLeod, Fraser Aird. So like the team was like very mixed of like youth boys that loved the club, like Lee McCulloch, Lee Wallace. So it was like a weird way to come back. And I remember McCoy's pulling me after about a week or two after the testing week and was like, "We're going to offer you a contract, just the same terms of what I signed, basically. So the same terms, but it's up to you whether you want to be here or not." And it was no brainer for me. I wanted to be there. Both the fact that I wanted to be part of Rangers again and didn't want to leave the club, and then more the fact that I thought that it was a great chance to play for Rangers in the first team because I looked around me and there were 13 players I had to play. So I was thinking, is it going to get me my chance? Is it a gamble? Yes. I could have went to other teams on more money, but I was at the best club, I think, at the time, to produce my career forever again. I was still only 19, so I didn't have many first team games under my belt. I still wanted to establish myself, and to do that at Rangers was a big pull. So yeah, so I came back that season. I signed a 1-year contract, and then the season sort of better hit or miss. I was always involved in the squads, maybe played about 13, 14 games that season. And then towards the end of the season, I played six games and I got 4 man of matches in them 6 games. Done really well. And I remember there was no talk of contracts again because the club didn't really have money back then. They were sort of surviving, trying to get through the leagues. And we just won the 3rd division. And McCoy rang me over the summer and he offered me a new contract. And I wanted a 2-year contract and he offered me a 1-year contract. So I had the dilemma of, again, I had other clubs after me, but I wanted to go back to Rangers no matter what they were offering me. I just wanted the 2 years for a bit of extra security and I thought I deserved it. So I went back that summer off the back of doing really well towards the end of the season, getting man of matches, fans were talking about me. And then that summer, I think he signed like maybe 10 or 11 players, like good players like John Daly, Ian Black, Dean Shields, players like this who had SPL appearances, doing well in the SPL, David Templeton. So it signed a lot of players and it put me way down the pecking order again. And I just never really got a chance after that. Don't get me wrong, I was training with the first team again and doing well, but I just never really got a chance. And then he came to me about January time and basically just told me that I can leave now and get a pay up, or there's going to be no contract for me in this season, so it's up to me. So I thought the best thing to do was leave and try and get a club. And because I went on loan to Annan Athletic, who were in Scottish League 2 at the time, I'd already played for Rangers at the start of the season, so I couldn't have went to any other team but Annan. So I had to go back to Annan in League 2, and I was playing with Annan for 6 months, but I was training with Falkirk, who were in the championship at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a contract with Falkirk, but I hadn't signed it yet because I thought I wanted to go bigger again, try and get in the SPL team. So I was playing with Annan. Teams were watching me. I was doing well, and I held out to Falkirk until that was basically last space. Like I wasn't going to sign for Falkirk until I really knew that they were the only club that was left. And that's how it worked out at Rangers leaving.
Mm-hmm. So then you were holding out for Falkirk, and I think you ended up going to Southport, was it?
Yeah. So what happened was Falkirk was on the table. The deal was on the table. The league that they were joining was obviously Championship. Hearts, I think, just got relegated, Hibs were in that league and Rangers were going to be promoted that league. So that league at that time was a great league to play in. That had a lot of big clubs in it. And Falkirk were doing really well. I think they were sitting like third or second. And so I was about to sign for Falkirk, and I went on holiday that summer, and I got a call from Peter Houston, who was named the new Falkirk manager. Gary Holt, who offered me a deal, he got a job at Norwich. So he got the assistant manager job at Norwich. And basically Peter Houston rang me as like, I'm a new Falkirk manager. I knew they've offered you a contract, but I'm going to bring in my own players, and we're not giving you the contract. So I was all up in the air. It was about a week the pre-season to go, and I basically left it too long to go anywhere. So contacted my agent. He got me a club in England, which was Conference at the time. I could have went and trialled like League One, League Two teams, but again, I needed money. I needed to get paid somewhere. I didn't know where I was standing. I was actually talking to Linfield, Crews, the Glens back home because I didn't know where I was standing. And then Southport came in for me. I went over to Southport and signed a year's contract in the Conference with the hope that I would play games and obviously work my way back up the ladder again, which was probably the wrong decision at the time, thinking about it.
So when you went to Southport, how did you actually find that?
The Conference just it didn't suit me, to be honest. It was a hard league to play in. The teams were all animals, to be honest. There was about 20 odd teams in the league. You were playing 3 times a week. And to be honest, I wasn't ready for the Conference. I was coming out of probably Scottish League 3 straight into English Conference, and it was a tough league. And I ended up 6 months in having to go. I went back to Annan on loan. Just simply didn't like Southport. Didn't like the league. I was struggling the first couple of games, first probably 10 or 11 games I was playing. We weren't doing well as a team. We had about 3 managers, and then the last manager came in, didn't play me, so I wanted to play games. Went back to Annan on loan, with the hope that it would be back in the Scottish market and SPL teams looking at me. And then towards the end of that season, sort of nothing really happened. Had a chance to sign for Annan again, and then I sort of made the decision to come home and try and get a house, settle. Because during that whole time, from probably under 18s at Rangers till Southport, my missus was living with me, and she was getting carted about everywhere. And then by the time I was at Annan, I wasn't on a lot of money, and I needed to live, and it wasn't enough to live. So I needed to say whether to stick out another year at Annan, try and get a move, or else come home and try and settle, get a house, start a family, and that's what I've done, and that's where I then come home and signed for Crews.
So what was it that you didn't like about Southport? Was it just the amount of games and the travelling, or?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't the amount of games. It was just the league. The league was tough. But us as a team, we weren't doing very well. So we had 3 managers in the space of 6 months, and I was still playing under the first 2 managers. But the last manager came in, I just didn't play under him. He brought his own players, and there was no point me being in the Conference if I wasn't playing. So I needed to go and play games, and I didn't have any other options but to go back to Annan. So I had to go back to Annan and play games and try and get myself in the shop window again, which I went back to Annan, and it just didn't happen. I done well at Annan, but I didn't get a move off the back of it. And I don't get me wrong, I still go on trials to teams and stuff, but I wasn't getting any younger, and I was sort of weighing up the money compared to where I wanted to be and where it's going to take me to get to where I want to be. And I just made the decision to come home.
So then we're in 2015 and you moved to the Crews. How did that move come about?
Yeah, so my big mate Josh Robinson, he was at the Crews at the time. I was actually talking to the Glens, and I'd agreed a contract with the Glens. I talked to Linfield, Warren Feeney, and Warren Feeney said there's going to be a deal there, but he couldn't offer me the right money that the Glens were offering me and the Crews offered me. And I sort of needed the money because I was coming home to no job. I needed the money to live on, and Linfield weren't offering me that money. Don't get me wrong, I probably wanted to join Linfield when I first came home because of probably the best club in the country. But the Glens offered me a bit more money, and I was on my way to basically sign for the Glens. And Josh Armstrong me was like, "Do you want me to ring Stevie?" And I was like, "No, I'm on my way to sign for the Glens." Like, "Don't be signing for the Glens. I'll ring Stevie and the Baxter and get you to sign for the Cruise." I was like, "No, I'm on my way to sign for the Glens." And then put my phone down, and then a call came through, and I was on the West Link, and Stevie Baxter rang me. He's like, "And they just come to the Cruise now, and we'll get a chat. Just a brief chat. We'll talk about the Cruise and blah blah blah." So I sat down, to be fair, and listened to Stevie, and I'd signed for Stevie within the last 20 minutes of talking to them. So that's how the Cruise came about. And to be honest, it was probably, looking back at it now, it was the best decision, because the Cruise had just won the league. We were playing Champions League football the next year. Their training room had a lot of brilliant players, brilliant guys, more so. It was just a great change room, and I couldn't have came home and settled into a better team, to be honest with you. All the lads were superb with me, and yeah, I still to this day I love going to the Cruise and watching games. I think it's a great club, it's a great family club, and the what they've came through is incredible. So yeah, the Cruise was brilliant for me at that time, and I spent 2 great years there and won a couple of trophies, won a league title, done really well in Europe, done well in the Champions League. I think we were the first team to get through one round of the Champions League, and give the Cruise and the club a whole big lift. And yeah, it was a great time.
So then we get to 2018 and you moved to Linfield.
Yeah.
So what was the story behind that?
Tough to leave the Cruise, to be honest. Really, really tough. I think Linfield, so signed a 2-year contract with the Cruise, a year and a half in my contract. Stevie pulled me, and he pulled me about a week before the January transfer window. I don't know why he done it, but that it sort of gave me a chance to speak to other teams. And if he would have offered me a contract probably 2 months before that, I wouldn't have thought about it. I wouldn't have thought about going anywhere else. But the fact that he held out that long to offer me a contract, I don't know why he done it. And there was other players around me signing new contracts, so I don't know why he done it. But it came to January the 1st anyway, and Linfield put a letter in for me, and I knew David Healy at the time, because he obviously played for me I played with him at Rangers, so it just sort of, I don't know, we were challenging massively for a title at Cruise and Linfield, and I don't know why Stevie didn't do it, but he waited until Linfield put a letter into me, and then he pulled me the day after in training, was pulled me up to the office, and he had a contract sitting in front of me and just said to me that he hasn't wrote the years on it. You can decide the years, but that's your contract, and you can sign for as many years as you want. And I just said to him, Stevie, that I'm really unsure what to do. I hadn't made my mind up yet, but I'm just really unsure what to do. I don't know. He's like, obviously, Linfield's coming for me, and he's like, well, and to be fair, he just left it with me, but he didn't really play me after that, and it sort of made my decision easier for me. And then I ended up just signing for Linfield, because I just thought that when I first came home, I wanted to sign for Linfield. I just thought I always wanted to get Linfield to go. They were winning trophies. Big club. I knew David Healy well. Windsor Park. There were just a few lures that wanted to bring me to Windsor. Don't get me wrong. The time I spent at the Cruise was so hard to leave, and the change room at that time were great lads. The team was unbelievable, with Paul Heatley, with Gavin White, big Josh, with Billy Joe Burns, Sean O'Neill, Craig McLean, Jolly Forsyth, all these players, like top class people, and people I still talk to regularly every day. So yeah, it was really hard to leave it, but I wouldn't have left it for anywhere else but Linfield, just in the simple fact that I wanted to give Linfield a try. I wanted to join Linfield, I wanted to go and play at Windsor, I wanted to play under Healy. But yeah, it was a really tough decision, but ended up went to Linfield and again won a few trophies, and it turned out a good decision for me.
Just looking back at your career, you played for the biggest team in Scotland. You played for one of the biggest teams in England. You've played for the biggest clubs in Northern Ireland. You've had a very successful career.
Yeah, no, I look back at it and still going. And obviously the club at Larne, I've massive hopes for Larne as well, what they're doing. But yeah, I look back at my career since it was a Green Island, up to Man City, the Rangers, the Southport on loan to Annan, the downs I've had at Falkirk, probably signing the deal, getting the deal took away from me. So I've had had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but I wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest with you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far, and the people I've met along the way and still keep in contact with, and the things I've seen in football and learnt, and the experiences I've had, it's incredible, and it's something I would never look back on and never regret.
Yeah, and you mentioned about moving to Larne. I know we're moving quite quickly through a lot
Yeah.
of your career here, but what enticed you to go to Larne?
I just think when I first came home, as told you, I made the decision to leave full-time football, and I came home to settle, to get a job, for my family's sake, for my wife's sake, just to be a bit more settled and home comforts. But then the more times went by, I would love to see Northern Ireland as a football go whole in full-time football. So when Larne came about, and I seen what Larne were doing in terms of full-time football, to wake up every day, and don't get me wrong, when I first came home for the cruise, I got a job in Screwfix, and I was working in Screwfix, and I was playing for Linfield, and I was playing for the cruise. And don't get me wrong, I was earning a good wage off both jobs, and I was living happily, and I was setting myself up. We got a mortgage. Me and the missus got a mortgage. We've now got a wee girl. So I have people to look after now, and that was a big thing. So when Lauren came in, it was like, oh, wait a minute, we're going. Leanne was like, you're giving up your job, which is security. You're giving up a lot of things, but like football's always, like, since I was 8 years old, all I've ever known was football. Don't get me wrong, I love Screwfix. The people I've met in Screwfix were amazing. I'd never had a job in my life until Screwfix, so I walked into like a job, like working 9 to 5 job. I didn't do it before. So when Lauren came in for me, and I'm still like training every day and waking up to play football every day, it's hard to turn that down. A lot of people say Lauren is throwing about this mad money and such, but they're not. I can tell you now, they're not. And it's just people who want to come to Lauren. And you've sort of seen over the last couple of transfer windows now where we have missed out on players, and it's because they went elsewhere for money. So it's not as if Lauren can just do this and do that and throw about all the money. The people at Lauren it's a real community club, and I didn't really know this before joining, but speaking to our owner, Kenny Bruce, who sat down with me in Coors Corner and talked me through the club, talked me through where he wants the club to go, and how much money he's put into the club already in terms of facilities and where he wants to drive the club. It was just refreshing to hear that happen in Northern Ireland, and to get the chance to do that in Northern Ireland. Listen, the things we're doing at Larne that I didn't do them at Rangers, like the professionalism at Larne is incredible. Like we've got our own nutritionist even at Larne who tells us how much to eat, and our sport and science coach tells you all your stats. I don't think that's happening elsewhere in Northern Ireland. So I'm in the best environment, and to have that environment back after coming home from England and Scotland, it was a no-brainer of me. It was more for the full-time football and to wake up and prolong my career inside of football. That's what it was for. And to do well. I want to do well. I want to do well at Larne and bring the first ever title to Larne. That would be the main goal for me.
I was talking to Nathan Hanley, and Nathan Hanley was talking to me about Crusaders and what was going on. He was saying since the Crusaders have went full time, you can see the difference in the players and the fitness. And then just on that, when I was talking to Stuart Elliott talked about the big difference about going across the water. So he went to Motherwell. He said it was all about fitness, and now that you're seeing more clubs go full time, it's giving them more opportunity to improve their game.
Yeah, I think we as a Larne, we spend a lot of our times in like the meeting rooms, breaking down games, finding out where we've got better. But also, as you said, at the same time, we're out in the pitch every single day training. So that has to have an impact, and we have to use that as our advantage. Again, the results in the past probably haven't dictated that, but like we're working as hard as we can, and we should be steamrolling teams in terms of fitness. As I say, when I first went over away back when I was 13, and you said to me about advice for young people growing up, then yeah, it is a big thing in Northern Ireland where you go from training 2 and 3 nights a week till like players of 16 training every day. You go home and you're tired and you're shattered and all you want to do is sleep after training. So I think if we have that in Northern Ireland, it gives players a better pathway, a platform to not want to go across younger. To maybe look at the likes of Gavin White, Stuart Dallas, and stay that extra bit longer in Irish League because it's full time, because you can get the good training in. So when you go there, you're more equipped to become a professional footballer. And I think if we have more teams like that in Northern Ireland, like the likes of Cruise, ourselves, Linfield are going full time next year here, the Glens, Coleraine. So if them clubs can go full time, then why not? Why not can players stay and try and develop their career that way?
I think from a fan's perspective, it's a very exciting time for the Irish League because there's a new level of professionalism in it. That people can
Yes.
actually see, that kids growing up can see, well, do you know what? I can actually make a career out of this. Going to Larne, going to Linfield, going to Crusaders, or whoever they're going to, because there's now money in it. It's a full-time job now.
Yeah, 100%. I think Larne are leading it. I think Larne and the Cruise in terms of the full time thing are leading that, where they've give players the opportunity, if you do well in the Irish League, that Larne and Cruise will look to sign you. The likes of the wee boy at Glenavon, who has just got the move, he's young centre half. Like he wouldn't have got that before full time. He probably would have stayed at Glenavon, but he's now got the chance to go play full time football. And if he does well, the Cruise, and I mean, there's clubs in England looking after him. There's clubs in Scotland looking after him. So, what you said there is right about young players. That they now have the aspirations to grow up and be a full time footballer in Northern Ireland, as well as trying to develop your career further and go ahead abroad in England and Scotland.
So we're coming to the end here, but I have to ask you about the County Antrim Shield 2020.
Yeah,
So talk to me about that.
brilliant. What a time for the club. I think we fairly deserved it. I think on our way to it, we beat the likes of Linfield, we beat the Cruise. So with a really good run and the beating them teams and the actually getting to the final of it. So, but for the whole town, it was just, we've always known the County Antrim Shield to be the bin lid. That's what you called it. But I'm telling you now, the bringing the first trophy to Larne was probably up there with my satisfaction of bringing a trophy to a club, in terms of it beats all my league medals anywhere else. I just seen what it meant to the people at Larne. I think the club's still getting. I think the trophy is still brought around people's houses in Larne. I think that's what it means to people. So to bring that first proper trophy to Larne was incredible. I think it gave the club a whole big lift. It gave us players a belief that we can go and deliver our first trophy and hopefully deliver many more in this year and the years to come. So it was just incredible. I think it brought a lot of joy to people in Larne, and as a community, it's brought us all together, and it was really nice to give something back to the fans and bring something back to the town.
Yeah, I'm sure the other thing that I'd like to talk to you about then is playing for Larne, and obviously you're playing in the middle of a pandemic. What's that been like? Because I'm sure you're getting tested quite regularly.
Yeah, at the very start, it was strange. Obviously, football stopped. I first joined Larne in January last year, and pandemic hit just about 3 or 4 months after that. So I'd only played like maybe probably 9, 10 games, and we were doing actually really well in the league, and we were starting to hit form, and we were unbeaten. And then the pandemic hit, and to be honest, everyone else was in the same boat where we were out for 6 or 7 months. And don't get me wrong, we had our own training regime where we were doing them Zoom classes with Mick O'Boyle, our sports scientist, who done an unbelievable job with us. Like we were training every day on our own, but we were doing them Zooms like 3 and 4 times a week, which I don't think any other club were doing, to be honest. So fair play to Mick and the club for doing that, and like keeping us full time, keeping us involved in football, and keeping boys' heads mentally right, because it was a tough time for everybody. So during the pandemic, it was crazy, and then we managed to relax the restrictions. We started being able to go into training groups. So we're down at Inver Park, and then by the time sort of October hit, I think the season started in October, so a month before that, we actually managed to get into pre-season. Again, I think all the work Mick done with us during the lockdown put us in good stead for pre-season. And then now it's just been a case of sort of stop-start. I think I spoke about this the other day. I think the fans, having no fans at the ground has been an absolute killer. I think just in general for the players and the fans, don't get me wrong, I think the clubs have done an extremely good job in setting up the streams, but I don't think it's the same. I think when you watch Premier League games, you see the mad results now, and I think the fans definitely have an impact. I think when we were flying at Inver, I think the fans were unbelievable. I think they were right behind us every corner, every throw in the opposition half. You just felt like we were going to get a chance and score on goal. Don't get me wrong. I think it's still. I think they went through a stage where we had a third of the fans back in the ground, and I think even the County games where we were playing, where there were some fans in the game, like the Cruise game, like I still felt like it was a full stadium because the fans were making noise. You just don't feel that now, and you have to find a different way inside yourself to motivate yourself. That you don't need the fans. You need to have that extra will inside you to go and beat teams or to go and get one over in your man, and it's just very different. And you mentioned about the testing. We're getting tested once every week now, and yeah, it's just strange times, and it's just one of them things where you just gotta get on with it. At the same time, there's people out there that still aren't back in their jobs, so we're extremely lucky the fact that we can still go out every day and play football for a living and give some sort of satisfaction to people at the weekends by watching the streams and watching the highlights. And I think the BBC and Sky Sports are doing a great job in putting on the games, and I think they're very well coverage. I think they brought good people in, like Sandy Waterworth, Bobby Burns. They've brought people in who know the league and they're talking about the league, and so it's, don't get me wrong, it's tough to play in, but end of the day, you still go out and fight for 3 points at the weekend, and hopefully the restrictions can keep settling down, and hopefully we can get fans back at the ground sooner rather than later.
I think what's shining through is, from what you've been talking about, is how professional Larne are. And
yeah,
I think the way it's going at the minute, Larne's putting together a team that anyone would want to play for in the Irish League just because of the professionalism.
Yeah, I think the likes of Linfield, the Glens have always been the benchmark of Northern Irish football in terms of winning trophies and things like that. And there's no doubt about it. That's where we aspire to be. Like, our club inspires to be the likes of Linfield, and we still look up to them clubs and likes of Linfield and the Glentoran, and like the history they've got within their clubs and their mentality of winning, and that's what we've got to strive to be like. With our facilities, with Kenny behind us, with our manager and all his staff who are extremely hardworking, the hours they put in the training ground, the people, the volunteers around the club, the people you don't see, the people like we Alan around our club, Big Gary, again, even likes of Mick O'Boyle, our sports science club, people behind the scenes, they're all working towards one thing, and it's to help Larne to get better. And there's so much volunteers out there that are in behind the scenes that are doing well for our club, and we as players have to deliver on the pitch. So the responsibility of us is, Kenny brings players in and Tiernan brings players in who he thinks right to bring the club forward and bring the club trophies and win games and success, and we're working ever so hard to do it. And I think we've had a wee bit of a rocky stage of late and a bit of inconsistency since the turn of Christmas, but I think if you look back at it, I think we were unbeaten there come to Christmas, but I think at the start of the season, if you had said to anybody, we just sit in second place, 3 points behind Linfield, 2 games this week, and we're playing at the end of the week, would you have took it? I'd have bit your hand off personally for it. So it's just a matter of keep working hard, keep going, and striving to where we want to be. And hopefully by the end of the season, if we're near Linfield and near the Crews and near these people at the top of the league, then you'd take it and you'd look forward to them games. That's why you come to Larne, to play them big games.
And we're coming to the very end here, and the last question that I want to ask you is about your coaching business.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about your coaching business, and then if there's kids out there who want to get involved in that, what channels do they go down?
Yeah, so obviously when I first came home, I started working in Screwfix, and then I went to was time for the cruise, and then I went to Linfield and still working on Screwfix. But again, I've always ever known football, and I've always wanted to give something back to football. And I love the game, and I love everything about the game. I love talking to people within the game. I love talking to kids who are trying to make it in the game, and I just love football in general. So, my best mate Josh Robinson, we were at Linfield at the time, and we were sitting on a bus to away game, and we just spoke to each other, and we just said, "Do you want to start? Do you want to start a coaching business and help kids in Northern Ireland, help young kids try and achieve their goals?" And to be honest, we just work really hard on it. We're putting all sorts of hours in on it at the very start, and what we do is we go into, we're called AMJR Coaching, and you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, AMJR Coaching, and we do a lot of stuff in terms of, we go into primary schools, we do one-to-one coaching, we do birthday parties, just an established coaching business now in Northern Ireland. But our main thing is we were going into primary schools in Northern Ireland, and we were going in and helping young kids basically enjoy the game. We go into a lot of primary schools where probably 10-15% of the school were actually wanting to play football. So 75% of that school, 85% of that school were missing out on football. And I knew what it was like back in the day, where you maybe had kids in school who weren't getting on the football team, but loved football, but just weren't as good. But let's be honest, P1 to P sort of 6, P7, you don't know where you're going to go. You're still learning and development. So there's a lot of kids missing out in football. And me and Josh thought that what a chance to go in and take these kids who love football, who show the right attitude, who come into our sessions with the right attitude and love the game. And we are just basically learning the basics of football right from P1 to P7, getting them involved in football a lot more, which then we broke it down, and we broke it down in terms of fitness, being active, learning, meeting new friends. And then on the other side is when you get a bit older, your mental health, in terms of, we've got a lot of kids in schools who they don't suffer with anxiety, but even just like putting their hand up in classrooms, the way they are around their friends. And I think football is a great way to bring that out in people. I think when we set up a session of 20 kids, we have a mix of all different kids, girls and boys, who have all different wee characters about them. And I think when you bring it all together and put a ball in the middle of them and play football and teach them little basics and learn them new things, I think it just makes their mental health go through the roof. I think it promotes it. I think it helps them. I think, and then you might get one kid out of that session who walks away with the happiest smile ever, but coming into this session is quite anxious and doesn't know what he's getting. So that was the satisfaction we're getting from it. And that's why we started, to get more kids in Northern Ireland enjoying football and to use it as many platforms. So it's going really well. In the summer there, we were doing one-to-one coaching. Again, we had a few big players in. We had Lee Manny from Galbraith in from Man United, with a lot of Irish League players coming to us for one-to-one coaching. So we're there for everything, to be honest, whether you're a P1 child who just wants to play football and you don't think you're very good, or whether you're a professional footballer and you want tips or advice, or whether you're an Irish League player and you want a bit of advice in the game and you want to work on your game individually, then we're tailoring for everyone. I would just find that football is a good way for everything, to bring people together.
That sounds absolutely super. So I think what I'm going to do is, after the podcast, obviously I think the podcast goes out on Friday, so in the bios then I'll just link your pages.
Yeah, super. That's brilliant. Thank you.
But thank you very much for your time.
No
that was
problem.
great. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you, top man. Thank you. Anything you need, just give us a shout.
Yes, not a problem.